We are here at the Homeland Security headquarters in Ward 8, blocks away from my house, where they have announced that they're going to be building a $300 million ICE complex here in Southeast Washington, D.C. Nationwide, we've seen ICE grab people off of scooters, kidnap our neighbors, and even kill people. We're also seeing Congress rip away $600 million out of our local budget, but at the same time appropriating $300 million to build an ICE headquarters here in Southeast DC. This is wrong. I need every elected official, whether it's ANCs, council members, even the mayor's office, joining us in protesting this plan to build an ICE facilities here in Southeast Washington, D.C. I'm also joining PSL next week, and we're having meetings about how to fight back. This is our city. We need to take it back. We cannot let ICE, Trump, Elon Musk continue to rip away from our communities and us stand up and doing nothing about it. Join me in fighting back against ICE.
It rarely begins with flashing lights or dramatic chases. Most ICE detentions in 2025 don't start at the border or during a violent raid. They start quietly, in a parking lot outside a job site, on a sidewalk during a routine traffic stop, inside a workplace during a targeted operation that quickly widens. A person is asked a question, a name is checked, a status is flagged, and suddenly the entire direction of a life bends toward a system most Americans never see.
Hey all, we are here at Stewart Detention Center where we had the opportunity to meet with several detainees, and the reality is that this detention facility has been around for decades at this point, and yet the conditions are awful. We heard from detainees that said they haven't been able to eat. We had detainees share with us that they are not getting the health care they need. In fact, one of them had seen a doctor recently who said that if he is not released soon, he could die here. I cannot fully express how inhumane the conditions are in places like this. And I want to be clear, there are people in this detention facility, those we spoke with today, that have either been ruled as not deportable, meaning they will not be getting deported, but ICE is refusing to release them. Cruelty is absolutely the point. And one other piece that people don't really talk about is the fact that detainees in here are being asked to work the jobs that professionals should be working, including things like maintenance, because the prison behind me is privately owned and it is profit driven. And when we talk about things like immigration enforcement, it's important to remember that they have turned it into a business. The more bodies they have, the more money they make. It is awful, and we need to completely close these prison systems and prevent more of them from opening up in our state.
Within hours, sometimes minutes, that person is no longer an individual in the eyes of the federal government. They become a bed count, and in 2025 and early 2026, bed counts are worth more than ever. Once in ICE custody, a detainee must be housed somewhere while their case moves through the immigration system. A system already overwhelmed, already backed up, already moving slower than the arrests feeding into it.
I've also made multiple visits to the Eloy ICE detention facility. I've gone there most as recently as a couple of weeks ago. I, unlike some of my colleagues around the country who've been denied visits, have been able to speak with dozens of women who have been inside these facilities. And every time I leave absolutely sick with what I hear and see from these women. I've heard everything from intentional withholding of air conditioning, or they either will purposefully shut off the air conditioning during the extreme heat in Arizona, or take it up so high that women are freezing and can't sleep, and they get woken up in the middle of the night being screamed at. We heard accounts of a guard who forced women outside to march in the heat in Arizona until one of them fainted. And this guard screamed at the women that, quote, "This is the price of the American dream."
ICE doesn't run most of these facilities itself. It buys space, it rents beds, it signs long-term agreements with corporations and counties that promise one thing above all else: capacity. And capacity, once built, demands to be filled. By the time the detainee reaches a detention center, often hours or even states away from where they were arrested, money has already begun changing hands. ICE pays roughly $165 per person per day. Multiply that by tens of thousands of detainees day after day, and detention stops looking like a temporary holding solution and starts looking like a business model. And in 2025, that business model exploded. But the real story doesn't begin at the detention center gate. It begins in Washington. In July 2025, Congress passed what supporters called the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. Buried inside the political theater and headline noise was a line item that would reshape immigration enforcement for years to come. $45 billion dedicated to immigration detention through fiscal year 2029. To put that in perspective, ICE's detention budget in FY 2024 was about $3.4 billion. In a single legislative stroke, detention funding didn't just increase, it multiplied. The stated goal was simple: detain and deport up to 1 million people per year. But the infrastructure needed to support that goal didn't exist yet. So ICE moved fast, very fast. Instead of slowly expanding existing facilities, ICE began shifting toward what insiders describe as a warehouse detention model. Industrial warehouses, former factories, large empty structures near highways and transport hubs, bought, converted and filled. These were not designed as community-based processing centers. They were designed for scale, mega detention centers, facilities capable of holding thousands of people at once, with minimal oversight and maximum throughput. The goal wasn't rehabilitation or integration, it was efficiency. And efficiency in detention economics means volume. By early 2026, projections showed ICE preparing to detain up to 135,000 people at any given time, more than double historic averages. Every additional bed meant another daily payment. Every full facility justified the next contract. And nearly 70% of ICE's detention spending didn't spread across dozens of vendors. It concentrated, 10 contractors. That's where the money went, and that's where the incentives hardened. Two names dominate the ICE detention economy: the GEO Group and CoreCivic. They are not household names, but they operate the majority of ICE detention beds in the United States. And in 2025, their financial reports told a story the public wasn't being shown. GEO Group reported $2.6 billion in total revenue in 2025, a 6% increase over the previous year. But the more telling figure wasn't revenue, it was profit. GEO's net income jumped 800%. CoreCivic wasn't far behind, reporting $2.2 billion in revenue, up 13% year over year. Executives didn't hide their excitement. On earnings calls, phrases like unprecedented environment, highest utilization in company history, and record ICE populations weren't warnings. They were selling points, because ICE detention contracts often include minimum occupancy clauses, guarantees that facilities will be paid for a certain number of beds, whether they are filled or not. Empty beds don't reduce costs, they simply become underutilized assets waiting to be justified. In other words, once the detention space exists, the financial pressure is to fill it. Between 2025 and early 2026, 38 people died in ICE custody. According to available data, 71% of those deaths occurred in privately operated for-profit facilities. Those numbers are not debated. What is debated is accountability. As detention expanded rapidly, oversight did not expand at the same pace. Monitoring contracts lagged behind new facilities. Inspection schedules slipped. Transparency narrowed. In many of the newly converted warehouse-style centers, detainees were held far from legal counsel, far from family, and far from media attention. Transfers between facilities became routine, disrupting legal cases and severing communication. Medical care, already strained, became a cost center to be minimized. When deaths occurred, investigations followed. Slowly, reports were redacted. Responsibility blurred across contractors, subcontractors, and federal agencies. And the public rarely noticed, because detention happens out of sight, and because the people inside the system are easy to ignore when the system is framed as enforcement rather than incarceration. But the system doesn't operate in a vacuum. It is sustained by politics. For every person detained, there is a cost beyond the $165 per day paid by ICE. There is a job left vacant, a family destabilized, a local economy quietly drained of labor. Many detainees are primary earners, construction workers, farm laborers, service industry employees. When they are detained, their income disappears overnight, but the work they were doing does not. At the same time, taxpayers fund detention at historic levels. While legal immigration pathways remain bottlenecked and underfunded, the system doesn't ask whether detention is the most efficient solution. It asks whether there is space, and space, once built, demands to be used. The real question facing America now, not whether ICE exists, not whether borders should be enforced, but whether a detention system designed for profit can ever align with justice, or whether it inevitably becomes something else entirely. Because once human custody becomes a line item, someone will always be paid to keep the beds full, and someone will always be waiting to build the next one.